The FIRE community is one of the most accidentally anti-capitalist spaces on the internet. Let me explain. If you haven't seen my previous videos, I talk about my journey pursuing FIRE, and if you're not familiar with FIRE, it stands for Financial Independence Retire Early, which is basically a community of people who don't want to work until they die, and so they go on a mission of raising their income as much as possible in order to save and invest the difference so that they can retire at a reasonable age instead of working to death. The thing is, most people discover FIRE because they hate working. Anti-work, FIRE, those communities overlap a lot more than I think most people who pursue FIRE would want to admit. But there's a reason why people go to such great lengths to attain financial freedom, to have more autonomy, and to live more fulfilling lives. Today, I want to talk about all of the FIRE principles that overlap with anti-capitalism in a very interesting way. The first thing is that FIRE encourages anti-consumerism to a very high degree. When you pursue FIRE, the goal is to live on as little as possible so that you can invest as much as you can. This instinct literally helps you reject the manufactured need that capitalism shoves down all of our throats through marketing and ads. When you are practicing FIRE and you have to literally make a decision about everything that you're going to spend money on in a given month or week or day, you become very picky and you really learn to tune out the noise of all of the ad spend that happens. You really see the efforts and the lengths at which we are advertised to in an attempt to take our money by corporations. People who pursue FIRE have calculated the minimum viable budget it takes to live. With this, I feel like it becomes a lot more obvious to be able to see like how thin the margin is for people who are literally like just surviving or living paycheck to paycheck. And another thing in this is that healthcare costs are a huge factor when somebody decides to stop working, because a lot of healthcare is tied to employment. If you are pursuing FIRE, it's also a lot easier to see how just one health diagnosis can literally derail decades of spending. The next one is a big one. Tax law literacy. People who pursue FIRE most likely can tell you all about the different tax advantaged accounts, the different ways to save money when it comes to paying taxes. And the thing is, you see how many loopholes there are available. And again, for most people pursuing FIRE, we're talking about several $100,000 to a few $1 million. But when you apply these loopholes to billionaires, it is so obvious to see how these people are leeching off of the working class, like literally. And on that same topic, you understand the math better. You understand that $1 million and $1 billion are so far from each other. They're so far from even being in the same universe. $1 million versus $1 billion is literally living in a different reality. Somebody with $1 million, even 10 to 20 million, is living in a completely different reality than somebody with $1 billion. Another thing that might not be as prevalent, but if you do have a little bit of consciousness in you already, you just see how FIRE only works when you have an income high enough to live and save and invest. Most FIRE math assumes a lot of stability, like, you know, your kids don't need any specialized care, you don't have a medical crisis, you don't experience a layoff. And you know, when people go through these things and they see how much that derails their plans, I feel like it really exposes how, again, like how thin those margins really are. I feel like one of the biggest things that you'll see in FIRE circles is people coming to the realization that capital is leverage. Money is not just security, it is literally power. Having a nest egg or a financial cushion literally changes the way you show up, and you see this a lot in different fire subreddits where people will be like, you know, I've noticed I'm a lot more bold at work. I'm not afraid to say no anymore. You know, if I lost my job, it would definitely derail me, but at least I have a cushion to fall back on. Under capitalism, people have to sell their labor to survive. So, of course, if you have no other option for income, you're going to be a lot more likely to just accept what's given to you and not speak up when you're working in bad conditions, or when you have a toxic boss, or when it's just not a good fit overall. This is also why employers benefit when their workers have no safety net, no savings, no health care, because they know that they can treat you badly because your options are scarce. When people who pursue fire actually hit their number, there's probably 3 main archetypes that you'll see lurking in these subreddits and posting about their experience. The first one is the depressed one. There are people who literally reach fire, they don't have to work anymore, they quit their jobs, they have all the time in the world, and they literally don't know what to do with themselves. They have given their entire lives to working and building capital and getting to this point that they've literally given everything away. They've given all parts of them that made them them because the only thing that they were focused on was accumulating capital. The second archetype is the person who cannot spend, the person who was so used to, again, just working and saving and investing that once it's time to sell those investments so that they can live off of them, they're afraid. The third archetype, I feel like, is the person who is finally able to rest. The people who get to retirement and they're so happy. They realize how shitty and unnecessary the conditions that they escaped were, and they're just so happy and thankful that they have time to live their actual lives, and they feel kind of sad that they had to work so hard just to have basic dignity, and again, just to have time for themselves as a fairly young person that can still enjoy their time. At the end of the day, I don't blame anybody pursuing fire, especially if you have the means to do so. However, I think it's really important to be critical of why that is what you want to pursue and understand the systems in place that have lent you to feeling the way that you feel and doing what you can as a privileged person to help make things better for everyone. The goal definitely shouldn't be to just get out and stop thinking about it. I think that playing a more active role, especially in local politics, is a really good first step.